I came back from my business trip in Singapore 2 days earlier than expected. I didn't tell a soul I was returning. I wanted to surprise James. We hadn't seen each other properly in 6 months because I was constantly flying between continents to secure the new merger. When I turned onto our quiet street in the suburbs, the first thing I saw wasn't my husband waiting on the porch, but a line of cars parked along our lawn. The garden, usually pristine and empty, was decorated with garlands of blue and pink balloons. A massive banner stretched across the entrance read, "Welcome, our little miracle." I parked my car a block away, my heart pounding a strange rhythm against my ribs. I walked over, my heels clicking on the pavement, but the sound was drowned out by the music and laughter spilling from inside my house. The front door was slightly open. When I stepped in, I froze in the middle of the living room. The space I had renovated with my own bonus checks was unrecognizable. Emily, my best friend since our college dorm days, was standing in the center of the room. She was visibly, undeniably pregnant, at least 6 or 7 months along. My mother-in-law, Linda, was gently stroking Emily's belly with a look of adoration I had never seen directed at me. My own mother, Margaret, was laughing as she served drinks to guests. A mountain of gifts, wrapped in expensive paper, was stacked on the coffee table. "So, is the nursery fully ready?" I heard my aunt ask. "Almost," Emily replied, her voice dripping with sweetness. "James insisted on painting it himself. He's been working on it every weekend for the last month." At that moment, my husband walked in from the kitchen, carrying a crate of champagne. He looked happy. He looked at home. He approached Emily, hugged her from behind, and placed his hands on her belly possessively. "We just need to set up the crib," he announced proudly. "We picked it out together last week." I watched as my mother stiffened. She had finally seen me standing in the doorway like a ghost, her face drained of color. She put down the tray she was holding and rushed over to me, grabbing my arm with a grip that was almost painful. "Sarah, we weren't expecting you today," she whispered, her eyes darting around nervously. "Let's go outside. We need to talk privately." I pulled my arm away from her grasp violently. "Talk about what, Mom? About how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working in another country to pay for this house?" The chatter in the room died instantly. It was as if someone had sucked the air out of the space. Emily was the first to turn toward me, her face turning a sickly shade of pale. James stood frozen, his hand still resting on the belly of the woman who was supposed to be my sister in spirit. "Sarah," he began, his voice cracking. "Don't you dare." I cut him off, my voice shaking with a cold rage I didn't know I possessed. "How long have you been cheating on me?" No one answered. The silence was deafening. My father, standing in a corner with a drink, couldn't even look me in the eye. The betrayal wasn't just marital, it was total. "I can explain," Emily said, taking a step forward, shielding herself. "We didn't want you to find out like this." "Oh," I let out a humorless, sharp laugh. "And how are you planning to tell me? After the baby was born? Or maybe when the kid turned 18? My mother-in-law stepped in, placing herself between me and the happy couple. "Sarah, please, think about the baby. Emily doesn't need this stress in her condition." "Her condition?" I repeated, the words tasting like bile. "The same condition I was in 2 years ago when I lost my baby after the third round of IVF. Where was your concern then, Linda? Where was this support when I was grieving?" The silence that followed was heavy with guilt. My mother tried again, her voice pleading. "Honey, I know this is difficult." "Difficult for whom?" I snapped, turning on her. "For me, who worked nonstop for 9 months in Asia? Or for all of you who had to keep up this exhausting charade? You're all liars." James finally stepped away from Emily, raising his hands in a surrender gesture. "Sarah, can we talk privately? Please don't make a scene." "A scene?" I stepped closer to him. "No, James. A scene would be telling everyone here how you convinced me to take that overseas job, how you held my hands and said we needed the money to secure our future family." I turned my gaze to Emily. "Did he tell you that? Or did he give you the speech about being lonely and abandoned while his cruel, ambitious wife chased her career?" Emily started crying, crocodile tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't like that. We didn't plan this. We fell in love." "Of course not," I sneered. "I suppose you just tripped and fell pregnant by my husband. These things just happen, right?" The guests began shifting uncomfortably. Some grabbed their bags, realizing this wasn't a party anymore. It was a crime scene. My father finally spoke up. "Sarah, calm down. You're upset." "Upset? No, Dad. I'm perfectly calm. In fact, I'm grateful. My mother frowned, confused. Grateful? Yes, because now I see everyone for who they really are. My husband, the parasite, my best friend, the traitor, and my family, the cowards who chose to protect this lie instead of their own daughter. I walked over to the gift table and grabbed a beautifully wrapped box at random. "This one's yours, Mom," I said, reading the tag. "You bought a nice gift for your son-in-law's mistress's baby." "Sarah, please," my mother pleaded. I tore the wrapping paper open. It was a white baby outfit with blue details. Designer brand. "How thoughtful. I hope you kept the receipt." James stepped forward, trying to take the gift from my hands. "Enough, Sarah. You're making a fool of yourself." "Making a fool of myself?" "No, James. You did that all on your own. You got my best friend pregnant while I was paying all the bills." My mother-in-law stood up, outraged. "This is too much. James was just looking for the happiness you couldn't give him. Always busy, always working." "You're right, Linda," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the room. "I was too busy working. Working to pay the mortgage on the house where your son was sleeping with my friend. Working to pay for his car. Working to pay for your vacations." I looked around the room. Every familiar face now looked like that of a stranger. "You know what? You can keep the house, the furniture, the gifts, the balloons. But James, I suggest you get a good job fast, because you won't have access to my money anymore." "What are you talking about?" he asked, turning pale. "I'm talking about how while I was overseas, I wasn't just working. I was also consulting a divorce lawyer. I have proof of every penny I spent on this house, on you, on our marriage." I walked out of that house without looking back. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My breathing was erratic, but I refused to break down in front of them. They didn't deserve to see my tears. I walked away, ignoring the curious stares from the neighbors who had probably heard every word of the scene that had just unfolded. I got into my car and slammed the door shut. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers turned white. My vision was blurred, but I refused to cry yet. I started the engine and just drove. No destination, no direction. Just getting away from that nightmare. My phone was flooded with messages, missed calls from my mother, texts from James. Even Emily had the audacity to text me, "Please, Sarah, we need to talk. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. You don't understand the whole situation." Oh, I understood. I understood perfectly. I understood that while I was working myself to the bone to support my home, my family, and my marriage, they were playing house. I understood that every time James called me saying he missed me, it was a blatant lie. I understood that every time Emily said she was busy and couldn't talk, it was because she was busy with him. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Disgust. Disgust at him, at her, but mostly at myself for not seeing it sooner. After driving for 2 hours, I pulled into the parking lot of a random hotel downtown. I needed a place to breathe. I wasn't going back to that house that now stood as a monument to my humiliation. I walked to the front desk and booked a room for a week. The receptionist gave me a strange look, probably because of my disheveled appearance, but handed me the key without asking questions. The moment I stepped inside the room, I locked the door and collapsed onto the bed. Only then did the weight of everything crush me. I curled up, hugging myself, and let the tears fall. Tears of rage, of disgust, of a deep, suffocating pain that squeezed my chest. But I knew I couldn't stay like this forever. I had to do something. The next morning, I went straight to my lawyer's office. He already knew about my suspicions, but the reality was worse. "I want to start the process today," I said firmly, wiping away the fatigue from my face. "Divorce, property division, immediate eviction, everything. And I want it to be clear that James won't see a single cent of my assets." He nodded, reviewing the file. "You have more than enough evidence. The house is in your name. The prenuptial agreement protects your earnings. All the household expenses were covered by you. He has no rights to anything." I took a deep breath. "Good. Then let him find out the hard way." I walked out of the office feeling an odd sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. My phone buzzed. "James." I ignored it. Minutes later, a message popped up. "We need to talk, please, Sarah." I only responded with 3 words. "Talk to my lawyer." Days passed, and the calls and messages didn't stop. Until one afternoon, while I was having coffee at a cafe near the hotel, someone approached my table. It was James. He looked awful. Deep eye bags, messy hair, wrinkled clothes. But I felt no sympathy. Sarah, please. He sat across from me without being invited. I didn't want you to find out like that. I crossed my arms, leaning back. Oh, but how did you want me to find out? With an invitation to the baby shower? He ran a hand over his face, exhausted. This isn't how I wanted things to happen. I made a mistake. A mistake? I scoffed. Getting my best friend pregnant was a mistake? No, James. It was a choice. You chose to sleep with her. You chose to lie to me every single day. You chose to let everyone cover for you. He lowered his head. I was lonely, Sarah. You were never here. You were always traveling, always busy with work. I needed connection. I let out a bitter laugh. And why was I busy, James? Because I was the one paying for our damn house while you sat at home finding yourself. You think I enjoyed those 14-hour flights? I did it for us. He said nothing. You want to know the most ironic part? I continued, leaning forward. I took that job because I thought we were building something together. I made sacrifices thinking it was for a greater good. But while I was working myself to exhaustion, you were screwing my best friend. He looked at me, desperate. I know I messed up, Sarah, but can't we fix this another way? Don't destroy me. We are fixing it, I said coldly. My lawyer has already filed for the eviction order. You won't get a cent. And as for that child, I hope you're a better father than you were a husband, because you're going to need a job. Sarah, please, it's over. Yes, James, it is over. I stood up and walked away without looking back. It didn't take long for the news to spread. My real friends, the ones who hadn't betrayed me, stood by my side. And my family? Oh, they tried to reach out. One night, as I was returning to my new apartment, I found my mother waiting outside. Sarah, we need to talk, she said, looking anxious. I rolled my eyes. I already knew exactly what this was about. We have nothing to talk about, Mom. James is desperate. You're taking everything from him, she said, outraged, as if I were the villain in this story. He's sleeping on Linda's couch. I crossed my arms. Oh, now he's the victim. Honey, he made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should ruin his life. I let out a humorless laugh. He ruined my life, Mom. He cheated on me, got my best friend pregnant, and all of you covered for them. And now you have the nerve to tell me that I'm being cruel? She sighed, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. What you're doing to him? This isn't right, Sarah. You need to forgive. Anger burned in my chest. Oh, you want to talk about what's right? Was it right for me to pay for the mortgage alone while he was betraying me? Now he gets to deal with the consequences. She looked at me like I was a monster. He has nowhere to go, I shrugged. Not my problem. He's an adult male. He can get a job. She shook her head in disbelief. I didn't raise you to be this way, Sarah. And I didn't expect my own mother to take the side of a cheating bastard. I turned around and walked into my building, blocking her number as the elevator doors closed. Days passed, and James's situation only got worse. Since I was the one who had paid for everything, he was now drowning in bills. Then came the eviction. I made sure to be there personally to witness the moment he was forced out of my house. When I arrived, the place was in chaos. Boxes were scattered around the front yard. James was arguing with the officer handling the eviction. Emily stood beside him, clutching her pregnant belly with a panicked expression. Sarah, he shouted when he saw me. You can't do this to me? I crossed my arms, feeling a dark sense of satisfaction bloom inside me. I can, and I did. This isn't fair. I lived in this house. No, I paid for this house. You were just a parasite living in it. His face turned red with frustration. Where the hell do you expect me to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. Emily looked at me as if expecting mercy. Sarah, please. Please. She actually had the nerve to look me in the eyes and say please. I took a step toward her. Oh, so now you can say my name? Before it was just, I hope she never finds out, wasn't it? She lowered her head. It wasn't supposed to be like this. But it is. And now you and James have to deal with reality. James ran his hands over his face. You don't have a heart. I tilted my head. Funny, because you sure loved that heart when it was paying all your bills. The officer approached. Time's up. You need to vacate the property now. James grabbed a box and slammed it onto the ground. You just want to see me destroyed, don't you? I leaned in closer, meeting his gaze without a trace of pity. Yes. He clenched his jaw and stormed away, Emily trailing after him. I stood there watching as he left, broke, homeless, and powerless. Time passed, and just as I had predicted, James sank even deeper. He had gone from a spoiled, dependent husband to a desperate man hopping from job to job. I moved on. I focused on my career, my future, and then I heard the best news I had received in months. Carmen filed for divorce. Or rather, Emily left him. I found out through an acquaintance. She ran into me at a cafe and dropped the bombshell. She left him, she said. I blinked. What? Emily? She left him and moved back in with her parents. She claims he promised to take care of her, and now that she has a baby, she needs financial support that he can't provide. The laugh escaped before I could stop it. A loud, genuine laugh. Are you serious? Dead serious. James can't hold a stable job, and she doesn't want to be the one supporting him. The irony was delicious. Emily, the woman who had sworn James was her one true love, had now done to him exactly what he did to me. Left him when he was no longer useful. I had to see this for myself. The following week, I went to a rundown bar I knew James frequented, one of the only places he could still afford. He was sitting at the counter looking like a ghost of his former self. Thinner, dark circles under his eyes, a cheap beer in his hand. I walked in slowly and sat 2 seats away. He noticed me immediately, his face tightening. "What do you want?" he muttered, his voice rough. "Nothing," I said, picking up my water. "Just enjoying the view." He sighed heavily. "Are you happy now?" I took a sip, savoring the moment. "Yes, very," he scoffed. "Emily left me. She took whatever little I had left." "You don't understand," he whispered. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied. "She said she couldn't be with someone who had nothing to offer. Funny, right? That's exactly what you said about me when you were justifying your affair." He shut his eyes, his jaw tightening. "You were only good enough for her when you were convenient, James," I said, standing up to leave. "Now that you can't provide the comfortable life she wanted, she threw you away like garbage." He didn't argue because he couldn't. "You know what's the best part?" I asked, looking down at him. "You deserve every bit of this." I walked out of that bar, leaving James to drown in his own misery. I distanced myself from my family, the hypocritical aunts, and my mother. I owed nothing to any of them. The only person I owed something to was myself. I rebuilt my life from scratch. I bought a new apartment, met new people, and enjoyed life without carrying dead weight on my back. I heard later that James tried to sue for alimony, but the judge laughed in his face. I also heard Emily was draining whatever tiny bit of money he scraped together for child support. And me? I had never felt better. The world was finally how it should be. I was free, and James was getting exactly what he deserved.